Good afternoon. Thank you for coming on time. Thank you very much. This is the plenary session number 3, Revolutionizing Medicine, Biotech, and Genomics. But let me, if you allow me, to say again, to welcome to Mr. Marcelo Ebrard, Secretary of Economy of our government. This plenary session will explore how advances in biotechnology and genomics are redefining the boundaries, the modern medicine, with insights for leading scientists, entrepreneurs, and global health experts. The discussion will trace the impact of genomic research on disease prevention, personalized therapies, and drug development. And it's an honor to have this panel with these prestigious speakers. In the first time, I'm here as a moderator, Juan Enriquez Cabot. He is the founder and chief executive officer, biotechnologist in Mexico and United States with a huge curriculum, and he's a great scientist, an entrepreneur, and a very close friend of all of us. Welcome, Juan. Juan Andres Sarur Yuri, founder and chief executive officer at the Greenlight Bioscience, Mexico and United States. He lives in Boston. He's a real active researcher and entrepreneur, and he's Mexican. Welcome. Dr. Laura Palomares. She is the director of the Biotechnology Institute of the National University of Mexico. She has a great experience as a scientist, academist, with a lot of laureates and prizes, and she is a reference in our field on research in Mexico, and the Institute of Biotechnology here in Cuernavaca belong to the UNAM at the federal government. Welcome, Laura. Thank you for coming. And last but not least, Dr. Luis Herrera Montalvo. He's the Dean of the School of Medicine of the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. He used to be the director of the National Genomics Medical Institute of the federal government, and a scientist, researcher, and he used to be the chair of science and research department of the Instituto Nacional de Cancerología for 10 years, a few years ago. So welcome, Luis Herrera. Then it's a pleasure to ask to Juan Enriquez Cabot to have the floor and moderate this important panel. Go ahead.
So I know what all of you are thinking. There's nothing like a good lecture on genomics to wake you up after lunch. That's clearly in all of your minds. And I did ask Javier to provide some basic biotechnology and give you all some mezcal, but he didn't do that. So talk to Javier. You're here to learn from 3 very distinguished authors. You thought you were coming to a genomics talk, but you're actually coming to listen to authors. So let me explain why you're going to listen to authors. Because the history of all civilization is a history of understanding and transmitting knowledge. The difference between ourselves and monkeys is not that we're that much smarter than monkeys. We see that every day in the news. The difference between ourselves and monkeys is that we can teach our kids and grandkids how to do things. When we start painting on a cave wall, we're telling people this is who we are, this is how we dress, this is how we hunt, this is how many of us there are. And what you're doing when you go to a cave wall painting in Baja California is you're learning about how people lived thousands of years ago. As we get better at transmitting data, you stylize those pictographs into Chinese or Japanese characters. And the original Chinese, Japanese, Korean characters are basically idealized pictures of what people used to transmit. One of the advantages of the printing press in Europe is that we were able to collapse all knowledge transmission into 29 letters. So when you write A, B, C, D, E, you can tell people what you learned 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800. And what we've done in the last 50 years is we've collapsed every language, every alphabet, every bit of data into 2 letters, because your phone operates on ones and zeros. And it doesn't matter if your phone is speaking Spanish or Russian or Chinese or Maya, you're still speaking in ones and zeros. And that is a very powerful alphabet. Because all of a sudden with 2 letters, you can transmit all the data that's used in the world. And every bit of music, and every every picture, and every video, and every film. And that's what's created wealth. It's the ability to understand, transmit, manage data, and the countries that understood that earlier are the rich countries today. Singapore had a similar income per capita circa 1965 to Ghana in Africa. But it educated its population in a new language. And what we're here to do today is to talk about a new language which is going beyond digits to the language of life. Those of you who are old, like I am, remember floppy disks. You used to put them into computers. This is a floppy disk, except it doesn't operate digital code, it operates life code. So the seeds in this, when they fall from the tree, begin to execute code. And that code is in DNA. So there's 4 letters in DNA, adenine, threonine, guanine, cytosine, and long strings of letters, say A, A, T, C, A, A, G, A, C, and that is an instruction set in that disk that says, grow me a little root. And then TCGACC, make me a little stem. GACCC, make me some flowers, make me some leaves, make me some more oranges. And in the same way as you can edit a document in Spanish and say, te quiero, te odio, you can edit that orange and change the AATCG so that becomes a lemon, or it becomes a grapefruit, or it becomes a tangerine, or it becomes a mechanism to make a vaccine, or a petrochemical, or a textile. And what we're going to talk about today with 3 extraordinary authors, because these are authors in the language of life, is we're going to talk about what you can do with this new language. We're going to start with one of the most elegant authors in the world. Some authors write beautiful, beautiful sentences, beautiful paragraphs. Well, that's exactly what Andrei does. Because he's created products that are so carefully targeted that you can get rid of pests without harming bees and without harming other animals that are next to those pests. It's a very elegant book. It's a very elegant way of writing. Then we have one of the most distinguished producers of biotechnology and vaccines in the world, coming out of Mexico's premier biotechnology institute. And she's going to tell us about how you recode your body using a very elegant mechanism called vaccines for various purposes, including potentially how to cure cancer. And finally, we're going to listen to one of the deans of one of the great med schools of Latin America talk about how medicine is applying the language of life to make sure you have a better quality of life. So think of this like a panel at the Feria Internacional del Libro in Guadalajara, except the language is not Spanish, the language is life. Please.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Secretary Ebrard, for having us. I had the pleasure of giving the keynote speech 2 years ago at the first STS forum in Mexico, and they promised they would never let me give another keynote speech again, because apparently I said some things that I shouldn't have said. I then had the pleasure of giving a keynote speech at the Kyoto STS forum last year. And one of the biggest differences between Kyoto and Cuernavaca is the presence of so many young people. There's a lot of older people in Kyoto. And the problem with us, old people, is that we are not the future. The future is the young people who tend to be sitting in the back row, which is quite normal. You guys are indeed the future of how we change life, how we change biology, how we change our world, how we change our country. Juan made a very important point, which is we are authors in the language of life. And it is a privilege and a responsibility to have that type of power to change biology. But it is also an incredible opportunity, and an opportunity that Mexico has that very few other countries in the world have. And as Mexicans, it is our responsibility to take advantage of that opportunity. And let me explain. We have heard today about many technologies, and those are all great technologies. Hydrogen cars, electric cars, fusion power plants, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, autonomous robots and planes and cars, and those are all great. But what I want to ask all of you is, what is our competitive advantage as a country in those areas? And that's hard to achieve. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't invest in those. It means that we should invest in those and keep up with the rest of the world. But when I ask myself, what is the one area in which Mexico can really lead the world, is in the area of biology, in harnessing the power of life for the good of humanity, as Secretary Ebrard challenged us to do this morning. Secretary Ebrard challenged me about 6 years ago to say, okay, well, you've been living in Boston quite comfortably for 30 years. When are you going to do something for your country? And so the reason I'm here today is because I believe that we have a very unique opportunity in time where Mexico can get its rightful place as the global leader in biotechnology. Juan said it very accurately. What I do in my daily life, in my day job, the one that pays my salary and allows me to pay the plane ticket to come here, is I use biology to very precisely target things. My current company, Greenlight, targets pests, things that eat the crops that our farmers grow. And we know how that works today. We spray chemicals that kill the pest and everything else with it, and the soil and the water and everything else. And that's not sustainable. We can't do that. We can't do that to our farmers, and we can't do that to our children. So we have to find a different paradigm. The paradigm that we found is to use RNA, the same molecule that constitutes those mRNA vaccines. And what we do is we spray them on fields so that they kill the pest that is eating that crop and has no impact whatsoever over anything else. And I'll be frank, Mexico was not our first choice of market. It wasn't. But now it is, and it is because of the partnership that we've developed with the government of Mexico. Mexico is, right now, our second biggest market, and we expect it to become our biggest market. The other areas where I've spent my time is precisely trying to cure disease. One of the most one of the work that I did that I'm most proud of is the ability to deliver a functional gene to a child that has a genetic defect that would otherwise die. I was part of a team that helped cure a horrible disease called muscular dystrophy. And what we had to do is we had to deliver a gene that was missing from a little boy that would have otherwise died because of the absence of this particular gene, of that particular protein. That is done by targeting precisely the biology that makes us sick. Why am I telling you all this? I'm not just bragging. I know I sound like I'm bragging. I'm really not. The reason I'm telling you this is because what is needed in order to be able to implement this incredible biology is talent. We don't need a lot of money. We don't need fusion plants that are incredibly difficult to build. We need to build people that have the talent and that have the wherewithal to go and attack problems that can be solved at that molecular biological level. And Mexico has that in spades. One of the things that we want to do, first and foremost, is to enable Mexico to build its own manufacturing of biological products that is available to anybody who wants it. Today, if a researcher, if an investigator has an idea of a cell therapy or a gene therapy, it's incredibly difficult for them to make that material so they can then test it in animals, in humans, and be able to develop a new product. It's almost impossible to do so. What we're planning to do is to establish the first contract manufacturing operation of that caliber, capable of producing materials of incredible complexity, using Mexican research and Mexican scientists, so that we become a true world power in the production of biological molecules. That, I believe, is the first and fundamental step to enable real research to take place in our country. It is very difficult to do true research if we don't have the materials to do research with. By enabling manufacturing of these biological molecules, RNA to treat crops, RNA to treat disease, cellular therapies to be able to address genetic disorders, genetic vectors to cure diseases, including things like cancer. We enable our own research institutes to make use of these installations, of this talent, and really develop us as the first step to becoming a global potency. When I think about what is needed, there's really only three things that are needed to be able to break through. And I believe that that is what makes biology unique. If you were to ask yourself, what do we need to, start becoming, a world power in production of airplanes? Okay, well, you need supply of steel, you need factories, you need artificial intelligence, software, you need a lot of investment, you need a lot of things that are very difficult to obtain. What do we need in order to become a world power in biotechnology? You need three things. And those three things are contained in this room. We have all the necessary ingredients to bake that cake, to become a world power in biology. First and foremost, you need the talent. And the talent is sitting right here in this room, right here in those chairs. The talent is there. We have some of the world's best universities. We have one of the highest per capita training of engineers and of scientists. And we are underutilizing them. We need to make better use of the talent that we are creating. Number one, the talent. Number two, the goodwill of the government. We need to change regulations that are 60 and 70 years old. We need to adapt faster than every other country in the world. And we may think that's hard to do. Ask the Brazilians if that's hard to do. They decided to become a world power in agriculture, and within 3 years, they had revised all of the laws that allow for approval of new products. If we have the goodwill and the respect and the following of the people who are making the rules, we can change the rules and make the rules that make sense for the state of biology in today's day. Number two. And number three, we do need investment. And investment is in this room. Investment of the caliber, of the magnitude that we need to potentiate changing Mexico into a biotechnology powerhouse exists in this room today. So I'm not here to tell you what I do. I'm here to ask you to do something. Train the talent, work with your government, invest in Mexico. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for the invitation. And of course, congratulations to Dr. Javier Davila for such a successful event. So I'm an engineer. So during my career, I have been focused on the product. I have been focused on the process. And then after working more and more on health, I realized that I was wrong. So when you're working in health, you need to be focused on the patient. You need to be focused on the human, and you need to be focused on creating health. So it is very important when we create health not to forget our environment, animal health, etc. So in order to revolutionize medicine or health, which is the objective of this panel, I think the first thing, and my advice would be to put the human being at the center of all these developments. So of course, genomics and biotechnology are transforming the development of vaccines and advanced therapies. So I work with both vaccines and advanced therapies, but it is very sad what happens in countries like ours. So for example, in Latin American countries, there are delays on the access of all these therapies to the general public. So these delays can range from 2 to 5 years in the case of drugs, if we are lucky and they get approved in our countries. But if we talk about medical devices and diagnostics, which are very important and part of the center of a health strategy, then these delays can range from 3 to 7 years. So what can we do to reduce these delays? What can we do to put medicine, biotechnology, and genomics available to our population? Well, first, and Dr. Sarur already said what the recipe is, produce our own medicines. Don't be dependent. And we have to start somewhere. So somebody that I really cherish said to me, we need the Mexican Ozempic, and it would be great that you could create such a drug as magic. But it doesn't work like that. We need to build infrastructure, we need to build environment, and we need to build our capacities to do this. So what is limiting us? Well, of course, there are regulatory processes, and it's great to see Dr. Armida Zúñiga here, and of course, Rafael Hernandez, who are leading this revolution on modernizing regulatory, and we have already seen how they have accelerated approval of drug products. So this, of course, is necessary to be able to have all these advancements in our country. So something that is also important are marketing strategies. We have to think about those also. What are the strategies that these big pharmaceutical companies are going to put in place, and if they're going to make these drugs available to us? And of course, there is a key part, which is the limited participation of clinical trials in Mexico. So I was speaking about this with Dr. Sarur before. So how expensive this can be. This is something that can be done in Mexico. And it's not only having clinical trials, but it is also creating all the knowledge, the ecosystem, and the ability to do all these highly level science here in our country. So there are many other things that we need to do to improve regional health security. And one of them, of course, is genomic surveillance. So this is something that we have recognized in the Institute of Biotechnology, but it's still something that we need to do more extensively, not only in Mexico, but in all the region. Because, as I was saying before, I am a nerd. So what I do during the weekends while I clean my house is listen to This Week in Virology, which is a podcast. And the motto there is, nobody is safe until everyone is safe. So it is very important to have surveillance strategies. So of course, there are infrastructure gaps, and these are very important. But we do have in our country strong scientific talent and emerging biotechnology hubs. But these hubs are like baby seeds that need to be nourished and taken care of, otherwise they will not grow. Of course, we also need to take leadership on artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and modular manufacturing, because all this is going to lower barriers for the regional innovation. So we must create our own hubs and capabilities rather than relying solely on external supply. So something that I think is especially important is prevention. We need to prevent disease, and we already heard Dr. Kesenovich's presentation about the changes in the lifestyle that can really change our life. But we also, of course, need to use vaccines and produce our own vaccines to have them available. And this is especially important also because one of the big problems that we are facing is antibiotic resistance. So this is a special niche where I think that Mexico can take lead, and prevention by using vaccines and other strategies can prevent the uncontrolled use of antibiotics. So if we do a strategic coordination effort, then we can become a meaningful contributor to the global vaccine and therapeutic innovation. But this, as Dr. Sarur already said, can only be done if we have all of you, and as someone that works at the National University of Mexico, if we have our youth trained properly in order to be able to face these challenges. So education needs to be focused on problem solving and also about doing more innovation. And these strategies, I think, can help our country not to suffer of these terrible delays, which are, of course, not allowing the access of our population to health. Thank you very much.
So I will use some slides because I know that after this lunch, probably you will be a little bit bored by my speech. So in that way, you can follow the letters over there. So thank you, Mr. Secretary, and congratulations on this very successful meeting. And thank you to my friend, Dr. Davila, who invited me to this meeting. And now I have to talk about something that normally we do not want to talk, which are the challenges that we face during the implementation of these kind of advancements that you are just talking about from my colleagues. And especially if we are thinking to implement these advantages in the region, not only Mexico, but the LAC region. So if I may have the first slide, please. It's just like this. Yeah. So, and also, I will address these challenges not only referring to genomics, although I do genomics and cancer genomics, but we know that all the omics sciences are all integrated, interrelated. So then when we speak about genomics, we cannot forget proteomics, metabolomics, and all other omics. And so in this way, the same way in which omics sciences are interrelated, so are the challenges we face in the implementation of these advantages or these advances. And if we want to speak about this specifically in the LAC region, it is the challenges are in reality a combination of technological, institutional, regulatory, and talent gaps. But there is one thing which is very important that we have to put on the table, that this continent, this region offers probably the most diverse population in the planet, and it deserves to be studied in a better way. So I was first trying to make a list of challenges, for not calling them problems, are challenges that we face in Mexico and not only here, if we want to implement the omics or omics solutions to our health system. And here you have a list. And in red, I decided to put probably what I consider the most or the major challenges among this list. And these are the ones to which I will be referring right now in the next slides. And one is, of course, the low capacity for large-scale sequencing and analysis. And this is something that, although in Mexico, Brazil, and other countries we cannot say that in Mexico we do not have this kind of capacity. Other countries of the regions really lack of that. So we have to think of how to implement, how to use these capabilities to offer solutions to the rest of the countries that belong to the LAC region. And these are some of the solutions, and probably the most important is to start creating centers of excellence. If we start creating not only regional but national centers of excellence, we can be attractive for investment coming from the industry, from entrepreneur people, but also the investment coming from the different governments. Because, as I said, some countries have more infrastructure than others. So we have to use this infrastructure in a cooperative way. The other problem that I saw, which may be a major challenge, is the lack of quality banks and large population collections. We heard about this during Dr. Kersenovich's presentation. So he showed that in Mexico are at least 5 different banks, biobanks. But the big challenge to implement biobanks is not only to collect samples. If samples are not correlated to clinical conditions, to the capability to follow the people that are included in those collections, these banks are really just not only a waste of money, but also a waste of time, because correlations that have to be made, we can do it just if we have good quality data coming from the clinical conditions. So, in order to do this, we have to create standards, and also to be able to certificate those standards. And those standards have to be the same for all countries in the region. And this is a big difficulty. And I think because I was trying to do this when I was the director of the National Institute of Genomic Medicine, trying to do this in Mexico, to have the same quality of data, the same certifications, not outside the country, but only in Mexico, and was challenging. So we have then to create a way to capture information, to capture clinical data, which of course will be heterogeneous in different places, in different countries. We have to create ways to capture essential data, at least the minimal data that we need to create correlations, and in that way to make algorithms that to implement the results of any kind of study that we try to do. One more challenge, which is also big in our system, is the fragmented clinical ecosystem. It's not only in Mexico, practically, and it's not only in countries that belong to this region. You heard also from our colleagues in the US, the fragmentation of the system, the ecosystem is a reality. So if we have a fragmented system, then it will be difficult also to obtain good quality data. And for all of us that are trying to do genomics, proteomics, or whatever omics you want to do, and collect data and apply AI to analyze those data, you know that what we need are good quality data. Without data, we cannot do predictions, we cannot do predictive medicine or precision medicine. So if we want to have a system in which precision medicine is present, we have to start collecting good quality data. So this was. Of course, we also have to face ethical rules and regulatory issues. To do this, not only in a country like Mexico, but then combine all those challenges outside and in other countries, it is probably one of the major challenges. But it is important, and we have at least to make a try, because otherwise, there is no way to do international collaborations. We have to think that if we want to export or import samples to participate in international efforts or international collaborations, it is important to have the rules established on how to use those data and how to share those data. How many of us have done studies where some people from the industry approach to us at the academic and ask us for data or samples? And immediately we think, okay, why are you asking me or requesting me this kind of data? So it is unclear sometimes, and there is no transparency on the business use of those data. We have just not to prohibit that, we have just to make it transparent and establish the rules before we start any kind of study. And of course, the funding. Funding is, of course, always a big problem. Perhaps it's not the major one, but we have to still think about that. And in our countries, it is always a cycle-dependent funding. So that means that we got funding 1 year and the next year is not present. So in this way, we cannot have or propose long-standing or long-lasting analysis or studies or collaborations, which are crucial if we want to establish a kind of good quality program on the implementation of omics. Of course, talent is probably the second most important problem or challenge that we have to solve. And it doesn't mean that in the region we are lack absolutely of talent. No, we have good talented people, but the problem is that we are not enough. We need to promote not only more PhD programs focused on this, but also we have to promote the formation of technicians that are able to perform some of these technologies, to attract this technology to the laboratories or to the clinic. And in that way, we can expand by several times the number of experts dedicated to the implementation of this. Of course, we still have a weak academic industry articulation. In Mexico, and especially with the relation with several colleagues coming from Mexicans that were very successful outside and now are coming and offering their experiences over there and trying to implement those experiences here in Mexico are becoming more frequent. But this is only probably Mexico and Brazil and perhaps in Chile or in Argentina. But what about the rest of the countries that belong to the LAC region? So, and I want to finish with this slide. And these are the cross-cutting measures that we have to do and we must do if we want to implement some of the solutions that are bringing by implementing omics, genomics, proteomics, or whatever you want, and are put in this slide. And as I said, the quality of data is probably the most important one, and the talent promotion, it is the second. So with this, I'd like to finish my presentation, and thank you very much.
So amazingly, we're on time. So we're going to have time for debate, questions, accusations against one another, rebuttals. The first thing I want to do is I just want to summarize what I heard, because you just heard 3 presentations that are really important. And to put a tiny bit more cream on Dr. Palomares' tacos, the work she's doing is incredibly important. Because what you have to understand is a mosquito is a flying hypodermic needle. And it flies through the air, and it comes and it lands on you, and it injects you with dengue or chikungunya or malaria, and you get really sick. And the work she does is exactly the opposite. She creates the equivalent of mosquitoes that prevent you from getting sick. And she's one of the world's experts on this. And if we can build up that vaccine capability on preventive medicine in Mexico, it's a lot cheaper than treating the diseases that are caused. And having centers and people like her is incredibly important for a country. The second presentation you just heard from Dr. Enreda, Dr. Enreda in essence said, I write really boring books. These are books which each of your bodies has, which is your entire human genome. It's about 6.4 billion letters in each of your cells. If you printed those books, it would be a bookshelf about that size, and it would be really boring. Except that if one of those letters is off, you die of Huntington's disease. And understanding that, and understanding the differences in how a medicine affects somebody of Latin heritage, when, as we saw this morning from Dr. Gusanovic, 80% of the clinical trials are done on people who do not look like us, is incredibly important to the future of medicine. So having a genomic institute and a school of medicine that understands that is really important. And then we heard a third presentation. And let me summarize that presentation, because I thought that may be one of the most important presentations we've heard today. When Andre said 3 words, sí se puede. And what he said, which is incredibly important for the entrepreneurs in this room, is if you want to build a really big company, find somebody who's got a real pain point and solve it. And healthcare in the United States is 19% of GDP. They're spending 2 to 3 times as much as other OECD countries, and it's the only country where lifespan is coming down. So there is a big pain point north of the border, and we can solve part of that. Because if you can solve that, you help the Mexican economy, you help the US economy, you help the Canadian economy, and there's a space to do that. And what I'd suggest for the rest of the panel is that we talk about cómo se puede. How can we do this? Because I think you put us on the right track. So anybody wants to take a crack at that? In general terms, let's do it.
I'll start, if that's okay. What does Mexico have that is different? What can we do better than others? We have to start there. We have broader and wider genetic diversity than our northern neighbors. That is an enormous advantage from providing a population to perform clinical studies that are globally important. We have highly qualified scientists that can live a very, very comfortable, fruitful life, spending a lot less money than our northern neighbors. And we can thrive in areas where artificial intelligence is not going to displace human creativity. If we train our people in the right disciplines, those people will be AI resistant. will be able to thrive with AI instead of being substituted by AI. If we establish, and I had this conversation with Dr. Krasinovich and with Dr. Armida last time I was here, if we are able to establish a world-class, first-in-human clinical research series of centers where we become the preferred country where people go to have first-in-human clinical trials, we will help our Mexican economy, we will transform, we will fundamentally change how expensive and how late clinical development is, and we will be the first ones to receive those therapies because they will be made in Mexico and tested in Mexico. So how do we do it? We do two things. We invest in our manufacturing capacity for pharmaceutical and biological products in the country, number one. Number two, we create world-class first-in-human clinical trial sites.
Well, I dare to change the saying of sí se puede to sí podemos. What do I think that we need to do? Work together. One of the main problems that we had, and we saw that during the pandemic, is that we are isolated. Instead of working together towards a common goal, we Mexicans work in small groups. And I dare to say that this is something that happens in all Latin America. So instead of joining as a team to accomplish something that would really change what's happening in health in Mexico, we compete with each other. And now I'm actually seeing this, right? Because there is this call, okay, now Mexico will produce its own vaccines. But now everyone is like, oh, this will be my vaccine, or instead of joining efforts. So how we do it? Sí podemos. We do it together and not as isolated groups or people. Thanks.
And I like to put one example of this and change a little bit even more. Sí hemos podido, because the pandemic put us on that way. So during pandemic, I remember when I was the director of that of INMEGEN, there was a lack of capability to attract PCR tests. So the only way to be able to convince Thermo Fisher and other companies to give us some of the supplies that were dedicated only for the US and only for the US colleagues was to show that we were a consortium with UNAM, National Institutes of Health like nutrition, like genomics, like respiratory diseases. And with that, we were able not only to perform diagnostics, tests, but also to establish groups that they continue working together and producing good science. And this is a way which is probably the only way to implement this quite diverse and I don't want to say difficult area, which is genomics or omics, but complicated. The only way to implement it is to work together with a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary team. And I think, no, I don't want only to say that this applies only for Mexico, as one of the leader countries in this region, we have to be attractive and attract other countries to do the same together with us. So that would be something important to say.
So we've got We've got 1 minute and 30 seconds left, so we're going to do a lightning round. And this is a lightning round where I'd also like to figure out a way of bringing all of you in after the panel finishes. Here's what we are doing. A new colonia has just been built. You get to name the streets of that colonia. A country gets what it celebrates. Who do you want to name the boulevards and the streets of a new colonia after? Who are people who are heroes, who have worked in Mexico, whether they be Mexican or foreign, that we have to recognize as role models. I'm going to start with Norman Borlaug, because the reason why the Institutos de Investigación en Morelos are so important is because those institutes fed the world through the Green Revolution, and this man won a Nobel Prize working at the CINESTAF. And it's criminal that we don't have a Norman Borlaug Boulevard somewhere in Morelos.
There's not a person, and it already exists in Mexico City as La Colonia Agricultores. Because without our farmers and without the food that they supply, we are nothing. And one of the most important things that I think is a little bit missing from this session is that biology owes our farmers all the tools that they need to be able to grow our food sustainably. So La Calle Boulevard Agricultores.
So, two names, Francisco Bolivar and Alfredo Herrera Estrella. So both of them, Luis Herrera Estrella, sorry, they both did important contributions for biotechnology, and then they brought those contributions to Mexico. So they came back and they established biotechnology in Mexico, founding two of the most important institutes that are doing research in biotechnology.
I think it is difficult to just mention one, but if I have to mention just one, is Dr. Guillermo Soberon, who was probably the builder of and the person who conceives all the system of institutes and institutes dedicated to genomics now. The Genomics Medicine Institute was built up by him. So that's.
And now your homework is to figure out who we should celebrate and who we should respect and how to create heroes that aren't narcos, singers, poets, and other things that we do and celebrate. Now we have to celebrate science, entrepreneurship, and people who agree with sí se puede. Thank you.
Thank you, lady and gentlemen. Thank you very much. We have another panel immediately. So if you allow me, Mr. Secretary, we would like to introduce the plenary session number 4. Is Aerospace Innovation and Advancing Aerospace Frontiers. Will you please come, Mr. Gustavo Tanco and the panelists, please? This session will examine the forefront of industrial innovation in the global aerospace and aeronautics sectors, with a particular emphasis of how technological advances are reshaping the industry in Latin America and beyond, bringing together leaders from National Space Agency, major manufacturers, and pioneering organizations. The discussions with highlight development in propulsion systems, satellite technological, and next-generation aircraft. I have the privilege to introduce to Mr. Gustavo Medina Tanco. He is going to be the moderator of this panel, and he is researcher and head of Space Instrumentation Laboratory, LINX, at the Institute of Nuclear Science of the National University of Mexico. Thank you for coming, Gustavo. It's a pleasure to having you here. Alejandro Cardona Seaman. He's the president of a very important company here in Mexico, Safran Mexico. Thank you very much for coming and the effort to come. And we had the pleasure this morning, and we are very grateful with you, Heriberto, for to be in this second chance here. Heriberto Zaldivar, as we introduced him with you this morning, he is the head of the strategy department of the European and Space Agency. So thank you, Heriberto, for coming again. Gustavo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Well, it is a pleasure to learn on the spur of the moment that I am the moderator. So I will leave my words for the end, but please we start with Alejandro. So we are covering a broad range from aeronautics to space, and you are in a very special position for sure, because you are a Mexican with an international company, a French company here with more than 20 industrial plants. So I'd really like to see, how do you see the place of Mexico as part of the supply chain, but also how that could be expanded to give the following path from manufacturing to innovation really in the sector, and especially also how do you see the new geopolitical context and what kind of opportunities and challenges it opens for Mexico, both in civil applications and defense.
For sure. So, as you know, Safran is the second largest aerospace company in the world, and Mexico is the largest country of the group here. We have 16,000 employees in 20 different facilities and in 4 different states. So one of the things that we are most proud of is that we do not only have this manufacturing base, but we also have a design team. So what we started doing is first specialize ourselves into the manufacturing business of aircraft engines. But we saw that the Mexican talent was very, very capable. They had a very, very interesting quality skills, which allowed us to develop further and start installing design teams. So right now, we have very proudly 200 engineers that are right now developing the engine of the future. The engine of the future is supposed to consume 25% less fuel, have 20% less emissions of CO2, and that should drive us into the future of meeting our expectations that the aviation industry needs to issue a net emission of 0 CO2 by 2050. So these teams that are designing this engine of the future in Mexico are mostly focused on the low pressure portion of the engines, the fan, and the low pressure turbine. We're also developing another team. This team is developing in Querétaro, which serves all of the landing gears in which we are present in military programs and in civilian programs. And what they are mostly focused on is all of the deviations that we can see in operation of the aircraft, so that the landing gear can keep on being airworthy with different standards and repairs from those of the origin of the design. And these guys actually get involved into programs such as the A400M, which is a military cargo aircraft. They get involved on the civilian programs, long-haul aircraft, 787. And finally, they also get involved into combat aviation, the F-16 and the F-18. Finally, into this future of design, of technology development further to the manufacturing base, we have a whole team in Chihuahua developing all of the electrical portion of the aircraft. The future of electrical aircraft is mostly focused on urban mobility. Urban mobility means that perhaps from now to 2050, we will be moving within cities in small drone-like or helicopter-like vehicles in which 2 people can be driving in the air, and the motors of that vehicle will be electrical. That engineering team in Chihuahua is focused on air mobility and on the future of electrical aviation.
So that's how we are pushing the barriers and the innovation frontier in Mexico within Safran Group.
Thank you very much. Yeah, they really deserve the clapping. So, Heriberto, first of all, let me say for whoever doesn't know, but he is a Mexican also and French double nationality from Chiapas beginning. So it's really an honor to have you in such a position, responsible for strategy at the European Space Agency. But I'd really like to know if you can talk a little bit of how do you see the strategy now inside ESA, especially facing what have been the traditional activities of the space agency and how they face new space somehow with entrepreneurship in Europe and of course how that can be expanded to the rest of the world through agreements.
Perfect. No, thanks so much. Hello, everybody. So generally, when we think about space, we look back into Sputnik, we talk about the Apollo era and the space shuttle. And space has been always divided by different kind of like steps, right? People don't know, but many people don't know, but Sputnik, the first satellite in space, was not about exploration, it was not about space. It was dual use. They wanted to launch something that proved was the same size of a nuclear device. And then it became an opportunity, and then the Americans said, we need to be in space too, and the space race started. So many times when we think about space, we think about the future, going to different planets, but many times the space has been more opportunistic than really long-term. When I joined the space agency, we decided that we needed to think a little bit more into the future. What is the core of space? And one of the cores of space was at the service of society, as I mentioned into the morning, and how it is permeating towards society. So we spent the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, creating a strategy for Europe that it is going to be for 2040. Why 2040? Because 15 years is long enough for us to kind of like see the resolution, but also it is far enough that allows us to put milestones, right? And what we saw was about what can it go to self-society. So we based our strategy in 5 goals. The first one was about protecting our planet and climate. This is very important. We all know about global warming. We know about how the climate change is affecting a lot of houses, families, floods and everything. Then we talk about exploration and science. This is something that it is in the core of humans. We've always been trying to explore, discover new things. The other one was about resilience and autonomy. We had a very difficult situation with the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. We have also lost the capabilities in Europe to launch our rockets. We have what we call the launcher crisis. We get Ariane 6 and Vega, that our launchers got grounded because we have some issues. So we realized that you cannot be a space power if you don't have access to space, right? But then we also start to think about technology developments, about innovation, what it is something that we need to bring down, and also building capabilities, but also building industries, attracting talent. And the last one is a bit more inspirational. We call it Inspire Europe and the World. And it is because every kid wants to be an astronaut. Every kid is excited when you see the moon through a telescope, right? So this is something that we're trying to put into it. And what it is interesting, if I have to transmit that into Latin America and emerging countries that are really trying to kickstart it, we are in a new era. Like the space of the past is not the same as the space of now. At the beginning of the time, you needed to launch a rocket. It was too expensive. Having a satellite, you needed to have tons. Now we have what we call the CubeSats, that are small units, 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters that you can launch. And at the beginning was an idea of how universities can learn capabilities. But it's becoming more than that. It's becoming something that industry is using, that countries are using, that is able to provide capabilities. So the reduce of the cost of launchers, the capability of technologies. Right now, many of the devices that we have in our phone, like on our pockets, like the phones, are able to withstand radiation and some tests and shocks. So this is something that allows capabilities to move forward. But what it is important, it is to give the emphasis to the youth, to the universities, to the entrepreneurs, opening the doors, making things easier for them, and also allowing them to kind of fail. This is one of the biggest challenges that we see sometimes. When, and this is something that it's impressive. You see when Elon Musk launches something, it blows up, it's a failure, except for them because they say, that was a rapid deconstruction and it was very useful because we learned. It exploded. But then you change the paradigm and you try again. And this is something that it is important, and I think that Mexico, with a lot of the talent that it has, the opportunities that we have also, it's in a very strategic location, can allow to do it. We have the talents, we have incredible universities in Mexico, we have incredible talented people, and we also have the capability for manufacturing. We had what we're discussing here, and all of this we can take into ourselves and develop something. And I think this is important to take advantage of that. Also, we need to dare to dream. I think there's an opportunity, and I think that forums like this is showing that also the government is trying to see how these capabilities become strategic assets for the nation to grow into the next level. Because when you open space, you open new technologies, you open new developments, and you allow to help not just the citizens, but also the decision makers and politicians can really take a look into what is from the, the helicopter view. You can see much better to make better decisions, protect your citizens, improve the economy, and also attracting talent. Mexico is a beautiful place. It has incredible living standards. So if you can do that and also have the opportunities to develop these capacities, instead of having Mexicans going out, you will have people coming in and developing. So I think this is also that we can take advantage and make it grow. We're talking at the morning about ALCE, the Latin American Space Agency. That is also something that Mexico has been pushing, and we at ESA are very eager to support because the model is similar to ours. It's the economies can grow and develop much more things when you kind of gather together. And Latin America, it's a powerhouse of the world that needs to be tapped into.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more with you both actually, but taking on the line that you mentioned about new space, all the opportunities open, but the diminishing of cost of launching, for example. And I would like to mention an opportunity that perhaps people is not aware of, which is the fact that we are in a very, I would say, civilizational moment, which is the fact that now going to the moon is starting to be economically viable to open really an economy on the surface of the moon. Yeah? If you think it, the moon is the size of Africa, so specifically, we are adding really a new continent to human civilization if we manage really to realize an economy on the surface of the moon. And of course, if we think the last time that happened, it was 500 years ago, and Mexico was not on the right side of history, perhaps, depending on how you consider it, but now we have the chance of being part of that huge process in society. Yeah? And many people say, why to go to the moon really to do an economy there? Yes? And there are several reasons. Yeah? Of course, there is science, and that's very important. The moon is very special in several aspects for doing science, especially cosmology and other things that cannot be realized here on Earth. But there are also some materials that have very important applications of the Earth, like ultra-pure silicon, that is important for the production of semiconductors, especially if we go to less than 2 nanometers of technology, and that here in Earth are restricted to some geopolitical regions, yes? And there on the moon are abundant. This silicon can also be used to realize the production of solar panels on the moon to be transported 20 times cheaper to geostationary orbit around the Earth than from the Earth, and with that open an 8 trillion business in the production of completely clean energy, solar energy, to be beamed with microwaves to the Earth. There are rare earths also. But say, this is a process in which we must, as Mexico, participate. Yeah? We cannot lose this opportunity. If we think in 1490s, probably people in Europe were following their regular lives with their regular problems without realizing that a huge change was going to happen in civilization. Now we have this opportunity because the cost of space has come down, and we are being, from Mexico, pioneers in this area. We are really developing the technology for doing mining with micro rovers working in swarms. Actually, from UNAM, we have launched a mission to the moon in 2024. We will launch another mission in 2028. Very innovative, so much so that the first mission is already at the Smithsonian Museum of Space in Washington, D.C. And this has opened already opportunities for Mexico to try to participate really as actors at the international level. We are already pushing as leaders from Mexico the creation of, from the International Astronautical Federation, of the first business model on the moon by the creation of a very large international experiment, yeah? An experiment for microwaves, probably at the bottom of a crater in the south pole of the moon, and to use that as a detonator to generate all the infrastructure in the moon. And it looks like science fiction, but it is not. Yeah? I'm coming from China now, for example, where around 100 companies have decided to participate in a project, but also companies like Lockheed Martin are also inside, and the idea is to involve the academia. Yeah? So these are opportunities for Mexico, really large opportunities that only exist in a time frame that if it is not taken advantage of, we lose these opportunities. And of course, all new space is an opportunity. Yeah? But in particular, this probably is one of the most impactful for centuries to come. Yeah? So that said, Alejandro, as you said, and also Heriberto, we have these wonderful human resources in engineering. We have young people that want to start companies and to start to trigger our capabilities in space, and even some very good examples in aeronautical, even if small, but really indigenous here. What would you suggest in order to try really to realize this potential? That to push, of course, you come from a very large company, but how to trigger innovation, how to do all these entrepreneurs, these young people produce the companies that Mexico needs to go the step ahead that we need to realize our potential as one of the large economies of the world.
What I will say is, actually, I must reveal to you that I'm a hidden entrepreneur. And that's because I always like to go into new projects. And definitely when I was coming out of my major, and many people here perhaps are in those footsteps, I had this frustration of feeling that aerospace, space in general, was very expensive, that you need a lot of capital. But now what I have detected is that there are niche spots in which we can place ourselves without necessarily having the need of that much capital. For example, a niche spot is, I will say, artificial intelligence, but without falling into the hype of artificial intelligence. In artificial intelligence, what we have seen is when you get satellite imagery, you can actually produce an algorithm that takes every single pixel into the unstructured data that is an image, and you can actually process that data to detect many things. If you want, for example, a security application, you can detect the reflection of light, and with that reflection of light, you are going to be able to detect different objects. If that's a threat, if it's not a threat, it's a civilian, it's a military personnel. If you want to do it on a civilian application like agriculture, our country is not only Mexico, but Latin America, we need to foster our agriculture. Well, satellite imagery is a way to do it, because if you actually process with those algorithms what the crop reflects in terms of light, you're able to see if the crop is sick, if the crop has enough water, and you can foresee what's going to be your crop by the end of the season, and then you're going to be able to forecast, obviously, your revenues, your return on investment. All of that is simply done in computer algorithms, and algorithms that through linear regressions as simple as that, linear regressions, through obviously what we are seeing now with machine learning, and that we feed back the algorithm, we're able to teach it to detect in a more precise way this thing. And again, this is done in a computer. And I believe that Mexico is not only well positioned to enter that niche, but we are starting to see ecosystems in which this is being pushed. The government, the industry, they are all pushing for the famous artificial intelligence. We can place ourselves into that niche. Another example in which we can go into would be all of the field of I will say, intelligence missions. And what is this? When you have an aircraft and you want to do an intelligence mission, you have to equip it with different sensors. People here will be very surprised to discover that the installation of those sensors is very complex in aerospace. You need to go through certification processes, you need to go through different engineering analysis, and there's very few companies in the world that know how to do it and at an affordable price. So imagine an aircraft like the one you guys see at the entrance here, and you want to fit it with a camera, a simple camera. And that's an intelligence mission, because you're going to be able to observe, detect, and identify. To install that camera in the aircraft, you need to go through an engineering process and produce a type certificate. And all of those processes do not require high amounts of capital to be able to do it. Even engineering groups in schools can set that up, and the government can facilitate through our Federal Aviation Agency the processes to be able to officialize that installation, certify it, and reproduce it at a worldwide scale in that exact same model of aircraft. So if people look at those niches, you do not need to think that aerospace is inaccessible because of the amount of capital. You do not need behind a gigantic company like Safran. You are able to do your entrepreneurship in such a way, identifying niches, but also in the huge companies like Safran, you can actually do what we call intrapreneurship. And let me give you a final example of intrapreneurship. Another thing that I am very proud of, because I am living through it with the engineering teams in Chihuahua, is that they went to these new space companies and they proposed that we're able in Mexico to produce all of the wiring, all of the harnesses for a space launcher. And this company that has the launcher decided to award the contract to Safran in Mexico, to this group of entrepreneurs, and we're going to start in Mexico producing the harnesses for the entire space launcher. And that's an example of how we can make reality aerospace within the country without being overwhelmed by such big things that we sometimes perceive too far away for us to reach.
Well,
I'm not going to talk about Mexico because I'm not very focused into that, but I see a lot of talented students and people outside that are developing a lot of interesting technologies. And you mentioned how can we do that the entrepreneurs move forward. Before I joined ESA, I was working as a venture capitalist. And one of the biggest challenges that I see sometimes it is that we're very technical. It doesn't matter that your sensor is more efficient. If you don't know how to sell it, you don't know the market validation. And I think that's something that can be easily done. It is encouraging programs to teach engineers how to sell, how to do business, how to really find the market value. We always make our investments into 3 points. It was technical feasibility. Is this a technical advance? Is something that I can really do? Yes, great. But then you have 2 more. One of them, it is market desirability. Is there a market out there? Is this something that it can be able to sell? And the third one, it is financial viability. It's my idea of being able to become a sustainable and profitable business. And I think that when I see a lot of the talented people outside, I think that it will be also good to teach them about these things. I'm an engineer myself, and I can tell you that many times I was like, oh my God, lawyers, what are they going to do? The best secret for any company is to have great lawyers. Like they can help you move forward. And I think that this is something that can really catapult a lot of the innovation in Mexico. The technical universities, the people who are developing all of this, like also plugged in into the business part. How can they sell? How can they do the much better marketing and everything? Because the talent is out there, but I think sometimes people do not know what they have, and I think this is something that it can be very easily catapult a lot of the innovation out there.
Complementing a little bit what you said, or what Alejandro said, I think it's good to emphasize that one tends to be space as the upstream sector, yes? Just whatever we send there. But there is also all these downstream opportunities that basically require software to do applications, so a very low threshold of entrance there, especially for young people. And I know that ISA has had, especially related with sustainable development objectives, a very nice plan of promoting small enterprises on the downstream sector. Right? Can you comment on that, especially for our young people in the audience?
Yes, of course. We have all of our Earth observation data. It is actually open source, and we have it open for everybody. We actually have, with the European Union, we have the EU Copernicus program that it is actually provided to Latin America and the Caribbean, that it is information that you can use the plugins, you can determine the information that you need, and you create business cases using this information. I mentioned in the morning, apologies, I mentioned in the morning that we get 250 terabytes of data every day across the world. So there's a lot of information that you can get. It's not just about photos. We're also sensing about the wind. We're sensing about soil. All of this information is something that can be used and can be developed into different business models. You can create something for farming. You can create something for agriculture. You can create something for safety and security. So there's so many applications that you can really use that it is very, very, very easy to take advantage. Wrap it around it, and you were talking about AI. AI right now, there's open models that you can put. So imagine you plug information from open data that it is out there from Earth observation, and then you put it with AI intelligence, and then you can have something that you can deploy very fast. And what is also very interesting, it is that when you're talking about climates, you're talking about agriculture, it is very localized, and you can use the specific, let's call it the Mexican spice into it, that allows you to really, like, you know the ecosystem, you know what are the needs, and then you can transform something to develop some things. And we at ISA are more than happy to provide this information to people. You just have to go into the website.
So, we even have some... Well, we even have some questions here from the public. So one of them is a little bit for me. It say, to invest in Colmena, would it be more productive than in other sectors, for example, biotech? Really, I wouldn't pose the problem in these terms. It's really good to invest in all the sectors wherever we have the capacities and the vision to do something. But to invest really in a lunar economy is a huge new opportunity, specifically because, for example, in the model we are proposing internationally, which is building a large international experiments, I have had the chance to coordinate also a large international collaboration of 17 countries for particle physics in space. And what do you see there when you do such a large experiment is that there is room for every economy, independent of the degree of development. He mentions harnesses. Everybody can do more or less harnesses. Yeah? There are things that you have really a very high threshold of technological know-how to enter into the business. But when you do something so large that can be modular, there are rooms for all the companies of all the countries to intervene. And we have a huge strength in the supply chain that we already have built here around the aeronautical sector. Yes? We have 360 companies here with all the certifications and experience of working in the aeronautical sector. From there to space is just a step. It's more a psychological step than really a technological step. Yeah? So these are really gateways, yeah, for changing the future, really. The future is technology. Yeah. We have to, as a country, at least in my opinion, attend the immediate problems of today, but also invest in technology for the future. And space and the aeronautical sector open these gateways. Yeah? So yes, it is a good thing to invest in particular in Colmena because it is innovative and it goes to a new kind of economy and can position the country there, but it has a huge multiplication opportunity for the country. Yeah? Let me go to another one, and this is for you, Alejandro, and this is how much we design and how much we assemble in Safran.
How much we design and how much we assemble. Interesting question because I will have to go to the particulars. Safran has 9 divisions in Mexico, ranging from interiors, equipment, engines, landing gear. So let's focus on one of our flagship divisions, which is engines. In the engine portion, we are designing, first of all, I shall clarify that the turbofan engines we design are in cooperation with General Electric. So General Electric designs the core, which is a high pressure part of the engine, and Safran does the low pressure portion, which is the fan and the low pressure turbine. So from the Safran portion, we design in Mexico 10% and produce the parts and assemble the full engine. And then on the General Electric portion, through our joint venture, that has been decided to be flipped. So actually General Electric designs around 40% in the country and only produces in the country what we call the life limited parts, which is all the rotating parts within the engine and the high pressure portion. So that's a bit on to answer on the portion of engines. In terms of landing gear, I will say landing gear is more on a 40% scale design here, and analysis, product support, engineering, and then the rest is manufacturing there. There's a very important link in North America because actually in Mexico, we produce all of the parts of a landing gear, and then we ship that to Canada. Canada does the assembly with the wheels and the brakes, and then that goes into the US to assemble into the aircraft, or we send it to the UK. UK does the assembly of the wheels and brakes, and then we ship it to Germany to assemble on those on the Airbus aircraft. So on landing gear, there is that portion, and then finally on all the electrical portion, that is 100% designed in Mexico. Actually, Mexico has the largest hub worldwide of engineering of all of the electrical parts of the aircraft, and as I said, the wiring, the harnesses. So 100% is designed in Mexico, and 100% is produced in Mexico. So that's a bit of the mix that we can have between the different divisions.
Thank you very much. The other one is for you, Heriberto. It's a little bit more political. How do you estimate, if you estimate, that the European Space Agency could collaborate or even finance some effective project with ALCE?
We are happy to collaborate. The European Space Agency is the space agency in the world who has the highest number of agreement across different countries about different organizations. And we actually have been supporting the creation and the structure of ALCE, the same as the African space agencies, are based on what we do. So our legal team has been actually providing some support. Regarding to budget-wise, ESA has a specific mandate. The agency was created to support European industry, and we have something that it is called the principle of geo-return. So this is a very beautiful approach that we get because every euro that comes into the agency by each country, it's a euro that goes back to that country's industry. So we are not able to kind of like provide money, but what we do many times, it is work into a barter agreement. So one organization provides a platform and we provide another platform and we're exchanging to kind of like help it grow. What we also can do it is provide access to researchers. We have some fellowships that they can come. We do a little bit of an exchange. I already talked about the Copernicus open data. That is something that we can also do and provide training and support. But overall, being very blunt, we cannot give money to an organization. So this is something that we cannot do. We're more than happy to see how we can help them grow and develop.
Thank you. Well, there is a question that I think maybe a little bit for all of us, but is what can be done in Morelos here? But I would extrapolate really, because I would say, how can we take technology in space, in aerospace, and open all these opportunities for all the country? I have had so many amazing students from different regions of the country. Perhaps two of my best students have been from a community, a coastal community in Chiapas, really huge, amazing experience. These young people eager to learn, eager to try to participate in space, in the technological world, that are just waiting for an opportunity. Yeah? We do what we can at our lab. We just open the doors to all of them to collaborate and to be part of that. And even it's a little bit sad sometimes to see people that really, for example, one student that I had from Chiapas, at some point she was the only person in Mexico that could calculate and estimate the damage due to radiation in electronic components, was in low Earth orbit and on the moon. And unfortunately, she was lost to the space sector, yeah? As it happens to many of my best students. Yeah? So, and with that, I also, before you answer that question, I would also like to write this dilemma, this problem that we have with young people. At some point, I was working in Brazil at that moment, and study to learn how much we were investing in producing a PhD in astrophysics. That actually 90% of them ended working as technicians in IT. And it was, at that time, 2005, more than $1 million per student, all the career, while a technician costed to the country $30,000. So this person actually ended up as a technician, but that was a frustrated scientist instead of being a happy technician. Yeah? And we have this problem that we don't see perhaps that the human resources, at least from the institutional point of view, is an investment of the country. An investment that somehow has to be useful to the country. And for every 100 PhDs that we produce in an area, 2 were really, really good. This is the one that will create innovation, that will create the companies. So when one of these peoples goes abroad, and it is a net loss for the country because there is no other person that comes back, which is something different that happens inside the European community where there is a net zero, say, movement of people. It was not $1 million that was lost, it was $100 million. So that's something that we need to take into account, and somehow, of course, faced with the dilemma that this human resource from the point of view, from the institutional point of view, is a human being and has a right also to realize his life. And we have to make these two things compatible. But I'm talking too much, so I leave you both. Thank you.
So I will say, what can be done in Morelos? Let me answer that. The aerospace and defense industry is a very, very entangled, I will say, worldwide. We cooperate with different companies. We cooperate with different countries. There's no way we can build a rocket, a satellite, or an aircraft all by ourselves, even if we are part of a huge company. So I will perhaps inform most of our auditorium that there's a company, a French company as well, called Thales, who's installed here in Cuernavaca. They actually produce most of your INES. They do all of the security. And Thales is a company with whom we work for all of the programs, mostly on optronics and inertial navigation, for example. So if this company is already present while not doing an aerospace activity, and right now doing the security portion of our INES, how can we, as a community, build more credibility in order not only for these companies to compete here, but the scientists, the engineers, the administrators that are behind it? And we usually tend to believe that that responsibility is from someone else. And we usually say the government. But it's not the government only, it's also us. What can we do in our communities? How can we give viability to our cities and states? One of the big things that can be also developed in Cuernavaca is, for example, as I said, all of the algorithms. So there's universities, there's here Tec de Monterrey, there's other universities that are working on algorithms to be able to build automation into vehicles. Well, if that takes off on the vehicle front, it might come into the aerospace industry. So that's how all these chains can be built upon. That's how the credibility of a community, of a city, a state, and the country builds upon. And that's how we can get most of the talent that is installed here or in other states on board of all these projects. But it all starts by knowing what is around me and what's the niche area in which I can go into.
Heriberto.
Oh, thanks. I think you mentioned something important. It is the niche area, and it is what can we do to kind of like specialize in something. I like to take the example of China. China in the 90s and in the 80s, it was just plain manufacturing, similar to a level that we have in certain areas of Mexico. And what they did, they start to develop capabilities, they start to learn more how the know-how, the logistics, the supply chain, and I think that this starts to create, and also the education starts to grow, and it is going to be a long steps. It's not something that you do one day to another, but it has to be consistent. We have learned something in the last 5 years in Europe, that if you are not in the dinner table, you are the menu. And this is very important. If Mexico, it is not really developing the capabilities, it's really not thinking long-term and trying to see how things are around, eventually it is difficult to jump. So I think that it is important to start thinking long-term. This is something that head of strategy, like I always think strategy and tactics are two different things. Many times we're being very reactive, and this is tactical decisions. We want to do this in the next 2 years, 3 years. This is great for a short-term vision, but if you want Mexico to really uplift, or any industry, you need to think about in longer terms, and you need to build the milestones to be able to achieve it. And I think that forums like this, or the work, this morning they were discussing about a strategy from the government about biotechnology. So all of these things are great, because you start to look into the northern star and you say, we want to go into that direction. So then you can walk back and check the steps that it can be done. We're talking about Tec de Monterrey, you're talking about, you have UNAM, you have IPN, and you have many other universities in Mexico that are ranked around the world as really great universities. So we got the raw talent. We have a very strong economy here that it is recognized. If I remember correctly, maybe the Minister of Economy is going to correct me, but I think Mexico is number 12 economy in the world. So there's a big possibility. So what we need to do is start planning into the long term and seeing how we can do this leap forwards. Because of course, it's not going to be one day to another, but I think this has a lot of potential.
I love you mentioned that Mexico is a 12 economy, because I think that the first thing is to have self-confidence. Mexico can. I cannot accept when we say Mexico has not the money, or has not the capacity, or has not the will. We do. It's just we have to do it and assume where we are really in the context of the nations of the world. Yeah? Because the first thing for entrepreneurship at the individual level and the country level is self-confidence. But anyway, we have 4 minutes, and I think that if we want to move the country forward in innovation, it has to be a dialogue, but not only among ourselves. So if there is some question from the audience, I would really like to have it because you have a unique opportunity to talk with this gentleman. So, who has a question?
Difficult questions, huh? That's what we need.
Come on, there is a hand there. Yep, up.
Gracias. Buenas tardes. Felicidades por su plática, muy interesante, muy innovadora e inspiradora. Mi pregunta es rápida y concisa. ¿Creen que el futuro de la exploración espacial, la investigación espacial, sea un futuro completamente armamentista o por ahí será que empecemos la exploración realmente importante?
¿Respondo en español o en inglés? Tenemos dos teorías. Está la teoría Star Wars y Star Trek. Entonces siempre si vas más hacia la parte militarista o la parte más humanitaria. Y yo creo que tenemos la oportunidad de cambiarlo. Está claramente lo que es la Guerra Fría, que era que la carrera espacial y todo, pero al final de cuentas yo creo que tenemos una oportunidad única ahorita de demostrar qué es lo que queremos hacer. Y algo que es muy interesante es la Estación Espacial Internacional. Es un ejemplo de lo que se puede hacer cuando pensamos que en el espacio todos somos iguales. No hay oxígeno, no hay agua, tenemos que trabajar juntos. Entonces, por ejemplo, la parte rusa depende de la parte americana y europea, la parte europea-americana depende de la parte rusa, la parte japonesa contribuye a ciertas cosas. Entonces, podemos hacer un ejemplo de eso y yo creo que hay una oportunidad muy grande.
Y si puedo agregar a esto, realmente en la industria, nosotros en Safran, por ejemplo, estamos muy enfocados en desarrollar todo lo que es Low Earth Orbit. Esos son satélites de observación terrestre y el enfoque es plenamente, como estaba yo mencionando, temas agricultura, temas sobre todo desplazamiento de las poblaciones, concentraciones también de las diferentes comunidades, cómo se lleva electricidad, cómo se está haciendo uso de los recursos hídricos. Entonces realmente hay muchísima inercia en la industria para enfocarse en temas de mucho mayor impacto humano, porque la industria también tiene un compromiso sobre la sustentabilidad. Entonces, si bien sí es cierto que hay esta parte militar, seguridad, realmente el mayor peso ahorita está siendo sobre la sostenibilidad de nuestro mundo. Entonces, no creo yo que el enfoque venga a inclinarse hacia un tema militar realmente al futuro. Creo que ya la humanidad entendimos que lo que más importa es donde vivimos y es hacia donde estamos trabajando.
Es una pregunta muy importante y me gustaría también verla desde otro punto de vista. Como les digo que estamos saliendo hacia una nueva economía lunar, es la primera vez que la civilización humana sale de la biosfera, ¿sí? La biosfera es esa capita que donde todos vivimos y donde hemos evolucionado por 4.500 millones de años, que si uno escala la Tierra una manzana, es más finita que la cáscara de la manzana. Ahí vivimos, ¿sí? Y ahí hemos desarrollado también todos nuestros problemas, nuestra forma de solucionarnos, que es el derecho, y hace 2000 años que seguimos basados en el mismo derecho ese romano, con todos los problemas que tiene cuando lo extrapolamos a la parte internacional. Y realmente ahora tenemos la chance de cambiar esas cosas. Si vamos hacia el espacio exterior, tal cual venimos, tratando de parchar nuestra legislación, ¿sí?, y llevar lo que hoy tenemos, corremos el riesgo realmente de terminar con un escenario simplemente bélico en otro contexto, como hemos venido haciendo por milenios, ¿sí? Tenemos que cambiar todo eso y es una oportunidad, y de nuevo una oportunidad para México, para ser un líder también a nivel jurídico y filosófico, porque hay que encontrar una nueva forma de plantear el derecho y cómo aprovechar esa economía y esas relaciones humanas y comerciales en ese nuevo contexto. Y acá hay un cartel rojo que me dice que terminamos, así que paramos, finalizamos. Gracias.
So this is the last panel of the day before the closing session. This will be the plenary session number 5. And the title is Developing Entrepreneurship for the Future. This session will convene global entrepreneurial leaders and investors to explore how innovation, leadership, and risk-taking are being redefined in the face of shifting economic, technological, and society landscapes. From venture-backed tech startups and biotechnology research and corporate leadership, panelists will share diverse perspectives or what it takes to build transformative companies across regions and sectors. So our panelists that maybe they are a little bit more than I thought, they are coming and I'm going to say the names of the panelists. And first of all, the moderator of this will be Dr. Adam Smith. He is the Chief Scientific Officer of the Nobel Outreach Organization in Sweden. The second one is Ángel Cisneros, Chief Executive Officer and founder. The Saptiva is the name, Artificial Intelligence. Please welcome Dr. Adam Smith. Thank you, Adam. Please have a seat. As I mentioned before, Ángel Cisneros, Chief Executive Officer and founder, Saptiva Artificial Intelligence. Enrique Galindo, he's a very prestigious professor and scientist here in Morelos and in our country as president of Agra and Biotecnia. Chapin Flynn, Senior Vice President of MasterCard. And again, our colleague and friend, Dr. Laura Palomares. So Dr. Adam Smith will be the coordinator and moderator of this panel, and I appreciate a lot your effort for coming here, as well as the other panelists. And you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank Javier Davila and STS Forum, LATAM, and InnovaFest for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure being here. It's been a fascinating couple of days so far. Thank you very, very much. So this panel is to explore the development of entrepreneurship in the future. And on our panel, we have 4 people who have very deep experience of taking innovation to people to the benefit of society. And I'm very much looking forward to listening to their wisdom in just a minute. By way of introduction, I just wanted to say a few words. Myself, I work for Nobel Prize Outreach, which is the outreach arm of the Nobel Foundation, and I'm the Chief Scientific Officer there. And one of the lovely parts of my job is that I work with many Nobel laureates. And Nobel laureates are all different, of course. Some are more different than others, I have to say. And the thing they all have in common, of course, is that they have discovered something that has fundamentally changed our knowledge of the world around us. So they sit at the very foundation of this knowledge ecosystem that Minister Ebrard described this morning so beautifully, that lies between the creation of knowledge and impact, positive impact to society. And so I tend to work in that foundational level in the creation of new knowledge. And with these laureates, we travel around the world, often to discuss issues of global concern, like health or energy or food or water, but very frequently to meet the next generation of scientists. We've been to about 40 countries around the world, visited over 200 universities, and I've had the pleasure of meeting tens of thousands of young scientists. And what that's taught me more than anything else is the obvious point that talent exists everywhere. And it is our deep responsibility to make sure that that talent can flourish. So what does it take to let talent flourish? We've heard about it in panels earlier this afternoon. I think that, or we've heard about the objective to let talent flourish earlier this afternoon. I think the fundamental thing is to allow talent to develop. And that means to find and follow its passion. And that passion might be for creating companies or bringing innovations to market, or joining the policymakers and providing policy environments that allow innovation to flourish and entrepreneurship to flourish. Or it might be to follow your curiosity and pursue basic research. As I go around the world, people ask me often, what is it that most characterizes the behavior of Nobel laureates in science? And the answer is obvious. It's that they've found and followed their passion. But what does that really mean? I think it's exemplified by a question that they get asked all the time, which is, how do I deal with failure? Young scientists especially encounter failure all the time. The experiments aren't working. My hypothesis was wrong. None of this is working. Our company is just not working. How do we move forward? And although laureates can answer that question, in some ways they don't really understand it, because the idea of dealing with failure is inherent in what they do. They don't expect an easy answer. They ask challenging questions. They follow curiosity to places where things become very hard, and they expect to fail. So failure isn't in any way the end of things. It's just an expected point on the route to answering the question they want to answer. And so the thing that characterizes Nobel laureates, I think, is that they have truly found their passion, something that drives them despite everything. They have fallen in love with some topic, and that topic holds them and sustains them. So the follow-on question is, how do you let people find their passion? What do you do to allow it to happen? And I think that the obvious thing is just to let people explore, to give people the infrastructure they need to find out about the world. And two Nobel laureate stories, if I may tell them very briefly, I think exemplify this. The first is a Nobel laureate in chemistry from 2021, David Macmillan. He produced organocatalysis, which has changed the face of chemistry, is producing green chemistry everywhere. But he was born in a poor family in Scotland, and he expected to go and work in the local factory. His elder brother went to university, and when his elder brother earned a higher salary on leaving university than his father earned after working for 30 years in the factory, his parents said, right, David, you're going to university too. So David went to university, but he didn't want to be in university, and he went to read physics, and he said he wasn't enjoying it very much, and the lectures were at 9 a.m. in the morning, and the lecture theatre was really cold. So he sat there miserably thinking, this is horrible, I don't really want to be here. But then he discovered that the chemistry lectures were at 11 o'clock in the morning, so he could sleep 2 extra hours before going to them. And also the lecture theatre was warm, which was nice. And he went to the chemistry lectures, and he still didn't want to be there, but it was less painful. But then one day he opened an organic chemistry textbook, and he saw what was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. And he fell in love right then and there with organic chemistry. And he became, in the end, a Nobel laureate. It can happen like that, but you have to give people the chance to encounter these things. And an even better story is one of the laureates from this year, Omar Yaghi, who will be awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry this coming Wednesday in Stockholm. He's getting the prize for producing metal organic frameworks, which are molecular nets that can scrub carbon dioxide from the air or pollutants from water, and they're incredibly useful and will transform the world. But he didn't work on them for that. He worked on them because they were beautiful. Omar Yaghi was born as a Palestinian refugee in a refugee camp in Jordan. For the first 10 years of his life, he lived in a one-room house with 10 family members and the cows that the family owned. And then when he was 10, he went to a library, and just like David Macmillan, he opened a book. And the book contained pictures of molecules, and he had no idea what they were, but they were beautiful. And he fell in love with them then and there, and he thought, I want to work on those. Whatever they are, I want to make these things. I want to draw them, I don't know what they are, but I want to do something with them. And he did. He studied chemistry. And then when he was 17, he was sent to the States, and he went to community college, and he got a job at a university, and his ambition, first ambition, was to publish one paper that got 100 citations. And then from there on, it grew and grew and grew, and now he's been awarded the Nobel Prize. So I think the message is that we have to produce structures that allow young talent, just as we've been hearing this afternoon, to find its passion and pursue it. And that takes an awful lot of work, because there are an awful lot of talented people out there who don't have access to that. With that, I'd like to stop talking about the foundational side of how to bring young people into this and move on to the real topic of the conversation, which is the development of entrepreneurship. Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to pass to Ángel Cisneros, who is, of course, CEO of Saptiva, building an AI infrastructure grid for the Latin American region, and indeed a serial entrepreneur. So please, would you like to take the floor?
Hola a todos. It's been a very humbling experience to be invited to this panel. One of the amazing things I like about being an entrepreneur is that I get to meet amazing people all the time, always learning. So that's one part of my job that I like a lot, and new experiences. So now, the part that I like about what I'm doing now is, yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur. My last company was acquired by a Silicon Valley company, and I'm happy to say that I took part of a transformation that happened in the country, first in Mexico and then into Latin America, with the means of connectivity. So with that experience, I learned that being an entrepreneur, building a business, a company, however you want to call it, you can be a transformative agent. And by being a transformative agent, you don't only do good for your country, but you only do good for your peers, for people. So that's what I love about being an entrepreneur, right? So nowadays, it's an amazing time for humankind. And what excites me the most, because then a lot of people say, hey, you already sold your company, you have achieved the dream, you can just go retire, play golf 24/7, 7 days a week. I tried that, but it didn't fulfill me. Then I started seeing, after 3 years out of retirement, I saw this big opportunity, because this time in history, we will not be able to see it again. So what is this that I found so amazing to do? AI. But AI in the sense of infrastructure. And the way I see it is that you cannot isolate being an entrepreneur from economic development. It's not about tech, it's about economy. If you see social media, you might see that they say that the best time to become a millionaire, billionaire, or whatever you want to call it, is the next 5 years. But in order to achieve that, you need the tools. You need the infrastructure to build things. And then it's not only about wealth, it's also about personal development. If we don't have the tools, we will continue falling behind. We are already behind as a country, as a region. And honestly, that's not fair. That's not, I don't feel good about it, because we have so many talent in the region, in Mexico. I mean, you are a very good example of what we can do on the academic part. But in order to keep building more and more and more, we need the tools. We need some way to motivate people to create companies, but not only companies, but only foundational, transformative companies, because we need a lot of those companies. And the only way to do that is to have the region stop depending on outside, on foreign players. Every time we continue using someone else's technology, we are like outsourcing our intelligence and our capabilities. And we are just making, I mean, I'm not gonna name names, but we will continue making other countries more powerful, and we will be more dependent on them. So it's as easy as saying, okay, we depend on what they want to do with us, with technology. If they say, hey, you won't be able to get the newest chips, the new technology, what happens with that? Then innovation, it's staggered at all. So we cannot develop, and the gap that we have as a region in economical, technological development, instead of closing, because thanks to AI, it's gonna increase that gap, and it's gonna increase super fast. And we don't like that. We don't want that. So I'm convinced that what we can do as entrepreneurs with a certain success, and that we can prove that it can be done, is that we need to give the fundamentals to children. We shouldn't be focusing on bringing large companies to Mexico for tax purposes or anything. We should be supporting the childhood, so they have the fundamentals to become real good entrepreneurs, and they should have the option to build things for their country. And if they leave the country, it's because it's their decision, and not because there's no other option. So to me, I just want to say, hey, go on and take a problem, something that you see, something that it really pains you. That's what I do. I want to be somehow an example to solve problems that actually make me get out of bed and say, hey, this situation cannot continue anymore, but I need to have the tools. So I think that's the future of how entrepreneurs in Mexico, in Latin America, will fund transformative technologies and companies.
Thank you very much indeed. Ansel, thank you. Can I ask you, the new global environment that Juan Enrique described so beautifully in the opening last night, does it make it even more competitive? Because there was a digital divide before, but now with AI, the resources are scarce and the need is very great. It's a very competitive world you're working in. Is that correct? Would you comment on that?
It is. It is quite a competitive thing. Like some of the things that I see now with this company compared to the other one that I started in 2006, everything was slow, right? There were no social media. But I think that also brings the best of us, right? So if you needed 100%, then you have to do 300%. So, and that at the end of the day makes something even better for the greater good, right? So in that, we could actually do some leapfrogs on the region. Maybe we have the talent, we need the tools, and then it's so competitive that maybe, who knows, maybe the region becomes the top 1 economy in the world in the next decade because of the tools. But we need to start igniting, making that happen with the young generations for future entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Enrique Galindo, please, the floor is yours. You're the only local homegrown entrepreneur on the panel, so over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Japanese-Mexican Organizing Committee for inviting me, mainly Secretary Ebrard and Dr. Davila. Thank you very much. And I will also thank the local organizing committee, Victor Sanchez, Jaime Arau, for a splendid panel and a splendid organization of this event. I will start with this splendid book that you received. Everybody received this, and I have to congratulate Governor Margarita González Arabia and all the team of CECITEM, in particular Victor, Jaime, and Antimio Cruz, for a splendid book that is describing the 42 centers that we have here in Morelos. I work in one of them, in the Institute of Biotechnology, since 40 years ago. Then 13 years ago, I started a company. I was a local professor, from the university professor, which, you know, the science that is produced by these centers is world-class science. Then the average productivity of the Morelos scientists is in the average of this OCDE. Then if Morelos were a country, it would be one of the average countries of the OCDE. Then, but what happened with all this science? Then 13 years ago, I decided that my science was good enough, but I would like to make an impact on society, which is the motive of this event. I started a company, and I realized that several other colleagues had started companies as well, and we created an organization, and I have to put this, then you can find all the companies that has been formed in the campus of Morelos of the National University of Mexico, in particular the Institute of Biotechnology and the Institute of Physics. This organization is comprehended by 28 startups that have been created mainly by students and former students and some academics. And I have to say that the problem is in Mexico is that we professors used to train our PhD to become professors like us, no? To publish papers, to perhaps submitting patents, but that was it. And the problem is that according to the National University, the National Organization of University from Mexico, there are 14,000 PhD graduated every year. And of course, they are not going to find a good job, neither in the public sector, nor in the private industry, because in general, private industry is not terribly innovative in Mexico. And then in Morelos, according to Jaime's data, there are 6,000 postgraduate students. If they create companies, they will be created and they will change the economy of this state. Because we know that the well-paid jobs that these companies create are in the top range of salaries. And of course, this could be a change for the country and in particular for the state in Morelos, in which we could have a hub of innovation and that changing the normal pattern that let's say, the formal and the all professors like me is training students. I have to say that I am proud of having found my company, but I am more proud because 3 of my PhD students formed companies as well. And this is one of the biggest achievements I have had. Then we can change the economy, at least of the state of Morelos, using knowledge, using science, using technology. And the students, which are the extremely talented students here in Morelos, one of the options for good jobs is to create companies, and we encourage, and I know that the Governor Margarita González Arabia is committed to transform this state in the state of knowledge and, of course, the state of kindness. Thank you very much.
Enrique, may I just ask one follow-up question? Is there one single thing you think would change the mentality of the graduating students that would make them more prone to go down the path of innovating?
I think, in general, the general PhD student in Mexico, including those here in Mexico, they are not very worried about the future of their jobs when they are doing the PhD. But when they finish their PhD, they realize that at least 40% of them will not get a good job in industry or in the public sector. And then I think it is a good motivator, of course, but not only because the need of having a good job, but for the pleasure and the challenge that is to be a scientific entrepreneur.
I just wanted to say, it just reminds me, last week I was with a Nobel laureate called Craig Mello, who discovered RNA interference. And he was talking to a bunch of young students, and he said it is the responsibility of the fundamental scientist to stay with the science as it reaches society, because only the fundamental scientist really understands the complexity of the science, and so they are needed on this transition to impact. And I thought that was a very telling thing that ties in with what you were saying.
Well, I would say that I agree with you. Fundamental knowledge is basic, but for instance, the winner of the patent contest is a member of, as emeritus professor of our institute. He is the professor in our institute who has published more papers, but have submitted more patents as well. Then I don't see that fundamental knowledge is against, let's say, applied technology, not at all. Then we need fundamental knowledge in order to make achievements of great impact.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So, Chapin Flynn from MasterCard, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to the STS organizers for putting on this great event. If I were you in the audience, I would be thinking, what the heck is MasterCard doing on stage talking about entrepreneurship? And I would say that, entrepreneurship occurs in startups, it occurs in academia, and I would also say that it occurs within the context of large corporations. In my case, I lead our urban mobility function. What does that mean? It means we want people to move around urban environments with as little friction as possible. But I would suggest that entrepreneurship often starts with an analysis of needs. What is the need? And in my case, we looked at this and said, forever, for as long as cities have been around, there has been a need to move around urban environments with greater efficiency. And when we looked at that challenge, we said, okay, we can play a role in that. But we didn't have a mature way of doing that. And so we have had to innovate and act like internal entrepreneurs at MasterCard. And maybe I can talk for just a few minutes about how we've brought that to life in practical terms. So what we did is we looked at that and said, as a fundamental foundation of what we're doing, frictionless urban mobility is a tenet. Then we said, okay, we can influence the payment side of that to a degree. Who else is within the ecosystem? And we need to identify the ecosystem partners that were influencers. And from my perspective, the most important was riders, people that were moving around urban environments. And so what is important to riders? Well, it's sometimes important, am I getting to my destination as quickly as possible? But for other riders, there's a high degree of price sensitivity. Am I getting there for free, at low cost, or at no cost? For other riders still, they wanted to travel with children. They wanted to travel with small groups and large groups. We needed to think about all of those rider concerns as a foundational approach. Then we needed to think about transport authorities and operators around the world. What were their needs? Their needs were increased ridership, decreased cost, decreased operational complexity, and improved sustainability and inclusion. And if we could play a role in that, now we've ticked off maybe the second part of the ecosystem. And then we looked at a third part of the ecosystem was, it's probably going to take money to do this, so we need to bring banks along in this journey with us. And we need to think about how we're helping them fill both their commercial and philanthropic needs. And so, as Adam and I were chatting in the green room backstage, I found out he's from London, and so London is a great example of where we've started to bring this to life. And we've done it in hundreds of cities around the world, and that's not an exaggeration. We said, okay, so riders need to move around frictionlessly. They want to get there fast. How do we do that? Well, I don't know. I went to Paris for the Olympics 2 years ago, and I found myself waiting in queues all over the place to load value on a little card that only worked in the Paris metro. That represents friction. So if we could say, well, what if you could just tap your debit or credit card right on a turnstile and keep moving? Tons of innovation had to go into the build of that process. So we addressed some of the rider needs there. We said we want to help them, unbanked and underbanked, move around urban environments. And so we designed products specifically to allow that to happen. We looked at transit authorities and we said, in London, they took their average cost of fare collection from 14.9% to 6.8% through the deployment of new payment technologies. So that ticked that box. We wanted to see about sustainability and inclusion. The problem with sustainability is oftentimes it's inaccessible. It is hard. It's the expensive solution. So how do we make it the cheaper, more accessible solution? And we have helped fight that battle to make the payment processes simple, whether you have a bank account or whether you are unbanked or underbanked. And then we made this whole case to the banks and said, this is good for you, both commercially and philanthropically. And we did the same at MasterCard and looked through that same lens. And so we've taken this microcosm of urban mobility, we've looked at the needs of the space, we've helped meet those needs, and now it's become a very meaningful business for us, and we call it doing well by doing good. And what I would say, just as an extension of this, because it was one of the things I was asked to prepare for, is we did a study, our MasterCard Economics Institute did a study on transit deserts, places where you don't have good accessibility to public transportation. In the US, 36% of people live in a transit desert. And on average, they spend up to 26% of their income on fuel. That is an incredible statistic. And if we can help people make sustainable choices, make less expensive choices, and give them access to first mile, last mile transportation, as well as to public infrastructure that can help them move around urban environments, it benefits everyone in the ecosystem. And we're not just limiting ourselves to public transportation, we're looking at micro-mobility. So when you take a bike to work, we noticed, we interviewed a bunch of folks that work in that space, 60 to 80% first ride abandonment occurs in that space. So when you try to borrow a bike, 60 to 80% of the time, you just don't complete it. The reason for that is high friction. You have to download an app, you have to provide details, upload information. We said that's not acceptable. Can we just put a simple reader on the back of a bike and you just tap your credit or debit card and you're riding in 10 seconds? Another space we look at is automotive, tolling, parking, EV charging. In that instance, we just announced a partnership with Volvo in the US where they're creating completely vehicle-paid tolls. The vehicle is taking care of all of the toll payments. And that's just part of a journey to full integration with agentic AI so that your time in the car now becomes a time where commerce can be conducted. So that if I'm driving to Mexico City, I can say, find me, I'm going to Reforma, find me parking within 5 blocks of my destination, pay for my parking, reroute my GPS, and find me a coffee on the way. That's all possible, but it requires massive innovation from public sector, from private sector, and from academia. And so at the end of the day, I would suggest my little function at MasterCard is making getting from A to B as easy as possible, but it has larger social, political, and economic impacts along the way. And I think that's what keeps me waking up in the morning and getting out of bed, as we discussed earlier.
Thank you very much indeed, Chapin. Thank you. So I can see how you have an entrepreneurial mindset in MasterCard, and you're interacting with entrepreneurs all the way around, everywhere, because mobility is so important to so many different new businesses that are coming along. Do you see anything that needs to be done in the entrepreneurial space in particular to make it easier for people to launch their businesses and interact with you?
Yes, absolutely. I would say, I think there needs to be a better forum to get the voice out there. It's so diffuse right now that the small business voices, we have a program called StartPath where we are highly selective about bolstering small businesses and entrepreneurs that are in target spaces for us. But small businesses finding their way to us have to go through a labyrinth. And I think taking some of the complexity out of that labyrinth and getting small businesses access to larger firms, particularly those that have an innovation center, would be incredibly beneficial to us and to the small businesses at large.
Thank you. I should point out that as moderator, I keep on jumping in with the questions, but if you want to jump in on each other's points, please feel free. Good.
It's not really a question, but I just wanted to acknowledge the program that you have for startups to get into the MasterCard environment. It's quite good, and as you mentioned, it's amazing that you can enable innovation just giving the chance to a founder that wants to change the world. So thank you for that.
It's our pleasure, and I'm very much looking forward to more of it in the coming years.
How nice that a friendship starts on a panel. That's perfect. Laura Palomares, the audience have met you already, Director of the Biotechnology Institute of UNAM. You've put vaccines into people in a most marvelous way. Please.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to stand up because my watch is like you really have been sitting all day. So, Madam Governor, Mr. Secretary, Dr. Arau. So I'm going to tell you a secret, something that I did not tell Javier when he invited me to this panel, and I also carefully hid from Adam. I am actually a failed entrepreneur. So some years ago in the Biotechnology Institute, we had this initiative. Let's do a startup. Let's start a company that would do diagnostics. And we failed miserably. Why did we fail? Well, because we were scientists. And the thing is that as entrepreneurs, we have to know that we cannot do it ourselves. So Enrique Galindo has been very successful, but he has been wise enough to share his knowledge and his projects with other disciplines and other people. So I have to say that I think the main reason we failed was that our CEO went haywire and we just gave him a free leash because we trusted on him. And then economy hit us, as you just said, right? If you're not sustainable, if there's no more money coming into door than out the door, you're going to fail. So the thing is that I work in a very challenging and difficult field, which is health. We have heard many times that bringing a drug to the market takes $1 billion. And this is something that has been, and now it's increasing. I think that this is something that is said to scare us. Yeah, I think the reality is lower than that. However, you require a lot of money. So what is the problem as an entrepreneur? That you'd have to raise a lot of capital. So we have heard about Boston as the place for startups on health to start and flourish. But that happens because there are angel capitals and other capitals that contribute. And what happens? Once that the drug that has been developed is ready to move forward, what happens is that a bigger company acquires this drug. And then with all the infrastructure they have and the money they have, then they can start the clinical trials, which is something that takes a lot of money. So I was talking to Andrei Sarur earlier, and he was saying that $1 million per patient. I was like, oh my God, this is just unbelievable. So this is the challenge in health. So as an entrepreneur in health, you need to find that chain to take your drug to the market. So as I already said, diagnostics is a good place to start. But again, Mexico is a place where Mexican capital owners are very adverse to risk. So that, of course, makes it very difficult to take a drug to the market, but there are examples. For example, Dr. Mayra Perez, who is sitting there, has been brave enough to endeavor this entrepreneurship and taking a drug to the market. And I'm sure she won't be a failed entrepreneur. Well, she's not, as I am. So it is very important to realize that innovation in health is a community effort because drugs that reach us need to go through clinical trials, and clinical trials are done thanks to volunteers. So this means that as a community, there needs to be the environment required to get these critical trials done. And we already discussed that a little bit in the previous panel, but I will have to say that in order for entrepreneurship in health to be successful, we need a critical mass. And that was already mentioned by Enrique, how we need to be many more of us that are brave. And I think that we need the leadership such as that of Secretary Ebrard that can guide us as a country to gather the efforts and take this entrepreneurship into fruition. Thank you very much.
Lara, I'd like to raise a topic with you, which I'd also like the others to comment on. As scientists, you're very used to the concept of mentorship, and you wouldn't really embark on a scientific career without having a mentor. But as an entrepreneur, sometimes you go it alone, as you did. And it's strange, really. So one of the things that is desperately needed, presumably, are pathfinders who've done it before, who know how to make the connections, who know how to live within the ecosystem and can act as mentors for others. I don't know if you or anybody else would like to comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you cannot do this by yourself. As I said before, we can do it. It's not a solo endeavor. And so there are many initiatives in Mexico, and Enrique has already described one, which is having this entrepreneurship club, and I think that that is very valuable because that gives you the space to discuss about problems, challenges, etc. So I would have to say that Enrique has been a leader in this field, and I see more and more. What happens is in Mexico is that we're not consistent. So now it's like, oh, let's become entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of support and effort, but then maybe not anymore, and then nothing happens, and then we go back up. So we need to be more consistent, but I totally agree with you. These type of organizations are required to be able to be successful.
Enrique, please.
Well, I would say first that from these 28 startups that has been created in the Campus Morelos of UNAM, 8 of them were here in the booths, and then they are somewhere in the audience, and they were showing the products. These 28 companies already have products in the market, and they are solving problems, important problems, at least for the Mexican society. And I would say that being an entrepreneur is a risk-taking action, but I think these 28 companies, I always say, has been founded by 28 very brave women and men. And in particular, the students, the graduates, are becoming more and more, few of them still. We are trying to convince a larger number of students to go into entrepreneurship. But this has to be an experience of life. And then if they have examples of other peers that they have done and they have succeeded in this, they perhaps will be more convinced to reply to make it like them. And I think that's one of the important things, that the environment here in Morelos, and in particular at UNAM and the University of Morelos as well, it's creating more and more that all the things that are needed in order to complete successfully the entrepreneurship. It's not a lonely activity, but it has to be brave.
Thank you, Enid. Yes, and it emphasizes the importance of days like today that celebrate these pathfinders, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So about like mentorship, as you mentioned, and the job that you guys have been doing in the academic research field is amazing, because you can see that it's possible to do great things, right? So in the side of being an entrepreneur, I think that in Mexico we have several cases that we have had certain success, big, a lot, I don't know, that's optics. But I do think that we do have the obligation to inspire, guide, or help others that want to go through that journey, because it's risk-taking, it's toll-taking, it's not meant for everyone. So everybody that wants to take that step, it's brave, and I do feel, I mean, I cannot speak for other entrepreneurs, but I do feel I have the obligation to guide them, or to at least motivate them. So I'm really happy at this moment, because I've never been exposed to help so many aspiring entrepreneurs as this time, and I want to thank Secretary Ebrard for this, because I mean, I've been doing this for 20-something years, and I've never had the opportunity to do this at this level. So it's so inspiring to be helping or showing some other guys that it can be done. So that's the future of entrepreneurship.
Thank you. And as an investor, do you have advice, one piece of advice for entrepreneurs, young people wanting funding who come to you?
Yes, I always tell them, don't read or forget about social media, because that's not what being a founder is about. It's not about racing rounds and rounds or being famous or being in the cover of XYZ magazines. It's about being transformative, doing good for your community. And of course, you have to be successful in the wealth side as well. So you can achieve both. So but my just advice is just forget about the noise. Just focus on what you want to do and find something that makes you want to get out of bed every single day and fix it.
That same passion that the Nobel laureates have found. Exactly, yes, please.
I was just going to add in, you don't see the failures on social media. You talked about failures, you talked about failures. I think you're exactly right. I completely agree that the failures, and that's particularly where the mentorship is needed as well, is during a failure, at the point of failure, because that's often the point where you're learning the most and need to pivot just a little bit. It's not often a huge pivot even. And I think I'd be very curious to hear others' thoughts about how you connect that point of failure with mentorship and development right at that moment, because you have to think that's a really critical moment for an entrepreneur.
In fact, we just have a couple of minutes left, but on failure, it's a difficult thing to talk about. ITER, the fusion reactor in southern France, was mentioned earlier. And the director of that, Pietro Barabasci, just published an article 2 weeks ago on the importance of documenting failure. On a project like that, he says so much is lost, so much information that we really need is lost because nobody documents failure. But anyway, sorry. Does anyone want to comment on failure?
Yeah, well, my advice would be to plan ahead, really ahead. So think of where you want to be and how to get there for 10 years. Otherwise, this is what happened to us. We didn't plan, we just said, okay, yeah, let's do this, but there was no strategy, no plan. So that's my advice.
Please. Anybody do you want to talk on failure?
Well, just to say that people ask me, is this has been your one company you have founded? It's not, but it's the first I have succeeded in. But don't worry about that. Perhaps that's the point. In Mexico, in general, people is not willing to take risks in general. And students, but I think students are brave enough, and they are talented enough, and naive enough to pursue really big things, and they can succeed.
Thank you very much indeed. Be brave enough to fail. It's a good point to end on. Thank you very much indeed to all four of my panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's almost closing. And as you can see, we have the honor to have again to Madam Governor of Morelos, Margarita González Sarabia. Thank you very much for coming. As well, of course, our Secretary of Economy, Marcelo Ebrard. Ambassador Tsutsilla, who is the Chief Officer, our most important representative with Mr. Komiyama and Madame Serizawa, but Mr. Tsutsilla, he's Executive Director of STS headquarters in Japan. One of our prestigious speakers, Bill Weeks from Microsoft, who is going to say, he's going to share the information of the statement of this summit in a few minutes. Thank you, Bill, to accept. Someone very special that Mr. Ebrard introduced to us a couple of hours ago is Professor Pavel Kavat. As Mr. Ebrard says, he is the Secretary General of the International Human Frontiers Science Program Organization. So we have the pleasure and the honor to ask him to give a message before the statement and the final closing ceremony. So Professor Kavat, you have the floor, please.
Very good late afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Minister, Governor. My name is Pavel Kavat, and I would like to say a few words. On behalf of many organizations, I am wearing hat from today. Before I do that, I would like to pay my due respect to all of you, especially to the Minister and to the Governor, because how these things happened 2 years ago at Kyoto STS Forum, we first met. And I heard about the STS Forum Latin America. I heard about the plans. I am a member of the board of directors of STS Forum. I'm also a member of the council. But you know how it goes. You are busy, and in the end, you end up to come here just a week before realizing how this would be. It is simply amazing, Minister and Governor, what you did here. It is probably the most successful regional forum I have ever seen. So I would like to thank you. Thank you for giving opportunity to all of us, mainly to this fascinating community of the young scientists and innovators in Mexico. Thank you so much. I am standing here. I'm standing here today to represent not only the STS Forum as a member of the board of directors, but also a very unique international organization called International Human Frontier Science Program Organization. That organization is about science, technology, innovations in the multilateral international context. It was founded in 1987 by the G7 nations, at that time the most industrialized nation of the world, and the European Commission. It was founded based on the Japanese proposal to the G7 countries. Late Prime Minister Nakasone introduced the idea to have an organization which will be looking for the best science across the world without borders, frontier science, for the benefit of humankind, not for Japan, not for the United States, humankind. I heard today here many of you speaking about the Mexican spirit, about talking about we are doing this not only for us, for the humankind, so there is a connection. That organization has a unique mandate to look for what we call discovery high-risk science. Science which has no promise, which is high risk, where no proposal is written promising I will cure Alzheimer and I will develop energy sustainability when you give me money. It's based on complete bottom-up creativity of the scientists across the world. Science which nobody of you will fund because there is no promise on the results. Let me tell you that in 35 years, we were supporting the best scientists across the world. We have 38 Nobel Prizes which were given to the primary idea coming from these projects. Number of innovations, patents, startups, scale-ups, coming from the project supported for a crazy scientific thinking is actually 3 times more than from the mainstream funding. So my first pledge today will be for discovery science. Let me give you an example, just one example of many. There was a project which came to us from United States, United Kingdom, and Singapore, and Switzerland, from the scientists, one mathematician, one sociologist, one biologist, and one was engineer. As they wanted a lot of money from us to study how gecko, you know, this little lizard, sticks to the ceiling. Well, nobody would fund such a project because there was no idea what to do with it. We have supported that project, and that project coming from the curiosity how gecko sticks to the ceiling resulted in a new material which is now being used as adhesion in the aircraft industry. Multi-billion business, Airbus and Boeing, based on this crazy idea of science which had no promise. And there are many other examples. My plea is here, we need independent thinking next to the all programmatic scientists. So please give space to the courage, give space to the risk. I am traveling the world and talking to funding agencies, my colleagues, you know, allocate like maybe 5%, maybe 1% of your budgets to this completely free way of doing international science. It will pay back enormously. We need to get back trust as well. These people who are getting our funding, they are not obliged to give any financial reports. They are not obliged to give any number of publications. They just do what their intuition in the scientific discoveries does. And it pays back. In 35 years' time, no single misuse of any money. We are giving a lot of money to international teams, and only discoveries and excellency came. So my first pledge is, in Mexico, in Latin America context, when you talk about future, think about there is a space for a discovery, high-risk, high-gain science, which pays back in many ways, including the industrial innovation which we talk about today. My next comment is about North-South gap. You know, we are in Mexico here. I just came back from Chile and from Brazil 2 weeks ago. And there is still this perception that there is a global North and global South. I don't believe in it. In my view, there is a boy working somewhere outside here in Cuernavaca who has a brain to become Nobel Prize winner. We only need to find a way how to accelerate that process. We are hopelessly outdated in the way how we try to help to each other. If there is a boy like that, he may get a master at UNAM, he may get a fellowship to come to Harvard to get a PhD, etc., etc., etc. Well, I am from Netherlands. If there is a boy in Cuernavaca kicking the ball in a nice way, Ajax Amsterdam will find him and get him in 2 years to the Premier League. We need to find a way how to get a new way of thinking about bridging the global South and global North gap. And we have a number of examples how we can do it in international context. So my invitation to the Mexican community to think with us about how to do that, because there is so much talent. Somebody said here in this panel this afternoon, difference between this panel, this STS forum, and Kyoto is there are so many young people, inside and outside. They are all big talents. We just need to facilitate them better and faster. My last comment is about innovation cycle. I am from the generation, like many of you in the front seat here, academic, having more than 100 plus PhD students in Netherlands and across the world, teaching them how to do the academic job and teaching them how to reach out a little bit, but not really giving them any advice about how to enter the innovation cycle. Innovation cycle nowadays, it's extremely fast. In my 5 minutes talk, many discoveries were made that some of you already said it today. So what to do? I don't believe anymore that we need to wait until a PhD student produces PhD thesis and then to say, go to some officer at your university who can help you to start up. No, we need to establish a dialogue, a daily dialogue between those brilliant minds we are supporting to do science and those who can help them to discover space to innovate, to discover potential in their science. So I'm praying here for a fora where these young scientists, being supported by any scheme you have here or in Brazil or Chile or wherever you are, and the innovators, chief science officers from the companies, actually to have a meet and greet sessions, to talk to each other, just to spread the virus, right, across each other. I think this is very, very important for the fastening of the innovation cycle. New way of thinking about that. Other than that, I would like to thank you for having me here. I'm also here to invite Mexico, and I already with Chile to join our organization. We have been talking with the ministers. Hopefully this will happen. I think there will be enormous benefit to the world, because yes, you are thinking for humankind benefit, but also to Mexico itself. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kabab. We are in a position to say welcome again to Madam Secretary Rosaura Ruiz. Thank you for coming. And of course, the Vice Minister, Undersecretary, Raquel Cerur. Thank you very much for coming. We would like to ask to Ambassador Sadayuki Tsuchiya, Executive Director of STS Forum, to say some words. Please come to the podium.
Yes, thank you. Distinguished guests, I'm Sadayuki Tsuchiya, Executive Director of the Science and Technology Society Forum. On behalf of STS Forum, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude for your presence in the STS Forum, Latin America and Caribbean Regional High-Level Meeting held in Cuernavaca. So today, we are discussing on achieving economic growth with creation of new values and on solving social challenges through that introduction of innovation. So a matter of great importance has been discussed, and I have the utmost respect for this discussion. We hope to move forward with examining the technical feasibility and industrial applicability of these results. Furthermore, the STS Forum is also pleased to contribute materializing the vision when necessary. Today's forum proved highly productive with progressive discussion through active networking among participants from diverse backgrounds. I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing how today's networking outcome will develop into setting innovative objectives and vision. Additionally, as a STS Forum, we plan to link appropriately discussion in today's meeting to the STS Forum plenary meeting to be held in Kyoto in October. Similar to discussion in Europe and the United States to further expand networking. We strongly expect you to participate in further discussion at the STS Forum in Kyoto in October. I conclude my remarks by expressing my expectation that STS Forum, Latin America and Caribbean high-level meeting will develop as global center of innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. We are almost finishing, and we would like to ask to Bill Weeks to say the arguments for the final statement, and he's going to make some consideration related with that. Please, Bill.
Good evening. I'm Bill Weeks. I am a researcher. I am a physician economist who works at Microsoft, and I run the AI for Health program within the AI for Good lab. And so I'm going to read the strategic statement, which is the thematic development of the STS Forum Latin America and the Caribbean 2025. This statement provides a detailed summary of the core discussions and strategic conclusions drawn from the main plenary sessions of the STS Forum Latin America and the Caribbean 2025. The focus remains on establishing a science and technology agenda that drives regional transformation, resilience, and sustainable growth across Latin America. So the opening plenary session, now there are kind of summaries of the different plenary sessions. The opening plenary session was entitled New Ideas for a New Era, Driving Innovation and Overcoming Obstacles in the Latin America and Caribbean region. This foundational session outlined the imperative for science, technology, and innovation to serve as the chief mechanism for addressing structural challenges and seizing development opportunities across Latin America. Innovation is a regional priority. Confirm that senior leaders need to confirm that science, technology, and innovation must be strategically aligned with public policy to unlock the socioeconomic benefits. There are 5 critical vectors. The session formally identified and validated the 5 thematic areas: water, electromobility, medicine and genomics, space and aeronautics, and startups/unicorns. These are the primary regional innovation vectors demanding high-level cross-sectoral collaboration. And then third was overcoming roadblocks. The discussions here focused on sharing candid insights into the current institutional, financial, and regulatory roadblocks specific to the region that hinder rapid innovation adoption. The plenary session number 1 then that followed that was Water at the Crossroads for People, Agriculture, and Energy. And this forum emphasized water management as an immediate and acute challenge for Latin American stability, driven by climate volatility and rapid demographic and industrial expansion. Here, the areas that were focused on were integrated resource management, with the core conclusion being a need for urgency for integrating planning across water, energy, agriculture nexus. The need for resilient technologies, where discussions underscored the need for regional adoption of advanced technologies for efficient distribution and treatment of water, reducing losses and increasing water quality in urban and rural areas. Also, agricultural resilience, where the idea is to implement innovations to maintain food security despite increasing scarcity. And third, to develop hydroelectric policies, balancing hydroelectric power generation with sustainability goals. The third effort here was plenary session number 2, Powering Progress, Smart Mobility in Latin American Cities. This session addressed the profound impact of the shift to electric mobility on the dense urban centers of Latin America, framing it as a socio-technical transition. There need to be equitable urban transitions, with the critical challenge being ensuring that the transition is equitable, benefiting both low-income populations and not just private vehicle owners. And also the strategic needs, where the dialogue highlighted the need for adaptive infrastructure, wherein developing integrated charging networks and smart grid technology would be critical. Policy leadership, where implementing strong policy mandates and regulatory frameworks to accelerate the adoption of electric public transportation. And then finally, urban planning reform, where incorporating zero-emission mobility into wider sustainable urban planning models should be implemented. There was then plenary session number 3, Revolutionizing Medicine, Biotech, and Genomics. Here, this forum focused on leveraging global advances in biotechnology and genomics to transform healthcare in Latin America, particularly in tackling endemic diseases and regional health disparities. Here, the efforts were focused on accelerating precision medicine, where the session advocated for targeted investment in genomic research in order to enable personalized therapies, where you move away from generalized treatments toward patient-specific solutions, as well as local drug development, wherein building regional capacity to accelerate the discovery and manufacturing of pharmaceuticals and biopharmaceuticals was emphasized. There also was the topic of preventive healthcare was touched on, where discussions stressed the role of genomics in early disease prevention and management and improving public health outcomes across the continent by doing that. Then there was plenary session number 4, Aerospace Innovation and Advancing Aerospace Frontiers. This session addressed the necessity for Latin America to develop high-impact industrial capabilities, with the aerospace sector serving as a key area for high-skilled job creation and technological spillover. Here, there was a desire to have regional capability building, where the emphasis was on fostering greater collaboration between national space agencies, universities, and private manufacturers in order to develop and integrate satellite technologies for regional data collection and communication, to advance research in propulsion systems and next-generation aircraft components, and to establish industrial leadership within specific niches of the global value chain. Finally, we had plenary session number 5, where entitled Developing Entrepreneurship for the Future. This plenary session you just saw underscored the indispensable role of the private sector and risk capital in translating scientific ideas into economic growth, doing so by nurturing deep tech ventures, where leaders stress the need for tailored investment models and regulatory environments that specifically support high growth, deep tech startups, particularly in biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and aerospace, as well as the emphasis on scaling and governance. The discussion here centered on sharing vital lessons in rapid scaling, corporate governance, and leadership that is required to transform regional startups into global unicorns and build the next generation of transformative companies. I can say for my role and from Microsoft, it's been a great honor being here with you all. I've been incredibly impressed, and I can't believe I'm on a stage with these eminent people. I do not belong here. I am, there's a thing, which of these things doesn't belong from Sesame Street? I am that thing, I think, here. I was really struck, though, in these last few sessions that Juan said that, you know, if you can find a pain point and address it, you will become successful. And then Angel said, do good, do what you love. And so you can do both of those things, obviously. And then Adam kind of highlighted the importance of failure. I am so good at failure. If I could wallpaper this entire room with all the rejection notices I've gotten from many articles, right? But you learn. Failure is the only way that you learn, right? Our first steps are inevitably followed by a fall. But we learn to walk better. We learn to run. We learn to challenge gravity and go into space and do all sorts of cool things. So I would just encourage folks to embrace the concept of research as progressive failure that leads to tremendous success. And again, here I've seen, and I've had this privilege to work with Luis Herrera at Tec de Monterrey and some other folks at Tec de Monterrey. There's tremendous potential in this room, as already has been noted. And it's just a real honor to be in front of you guys and to watch this development. And I don't wish failure upon you, but fail in order to succeed, and I think you will be tremendously successful. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Bill. Well, may I ask the honor to invite you, Mr. Secretary Ebrard, for the final conclusions.
Buenas noches, good evening. So I'm going to make few remarks, don't worry. I know you are tired. Then several hours working and thinking. Lo voy a hacer también en español para quienes están y nos hacen favor de escucharnos por esta vía. Hemos tenido 6 horas, 7 horas, 8 horas intensas de aprender muchísimo. Quizá no habíamos aprendido tanto y también no habíamos pensado tanto en tan poco tiempo sobre problemas tan complejos. Así que estamos extraordinariamente contentos, felices de lo que ha ocurrido. Creo que ha sido un gran éxito. Levante la mano quien piensa que fue un gran éxito el STS Forum. ¿Quién cree que no? So this means that you want to follow new sessions, maybe next year. Madame Yu Serizawa, present here, please give, come on. Look. Madame Yu Serizawa is the coautora de esta reunión. Thank you, Madame Serizawa. Okay, just say has been a tremendous success. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us in Cuernavaca, Morelos. A very suggestive, important dialogue, I think. We have new questions, many answers, I think, about electromobility, health, what to do in order to improve entrepreneurship in our country. And essentially, we are doing a lot of things. We have the 3 communities that I mentioned in the morning, and we are going to move everything because you can feel the energy in the exhibition with the young people, with the people which has been in the panels, in the sessions. So there are a lot of things to do, positively. And Madame Serizawa and the authorities of STS Forum have shared with us that we are going to host in 2026 STS Forum again, fortunately, here in Cuernavaca, Morelos. So, thank you, muchas gracias a todas y a todos. Has been great to be here. See you next year, fortunately, hopefully. Thank you very much.